folks, Roger B here. Today I'm going to show you how to set up your Spektrum DX6 or pretty much any modern Spektrum radio with Betaflight. So lots of folks, it's becoming popular for folks who use Spektrum radios with their drones. And so in this video series we'll show you the settings in the radio and then the matching setup in the drone. So when we're setting up a new model or setting up your model, you first want to go to System Setup and go through the setup there for your model. So I'm going to be showing you the setup for my QQ190 that's using an SP Racing F3 board. So for model type, I usually like the drone picture, so I usually select drone for the model type. For model name, just so you can name it, here's my QQ190 tank. For aircraft type, I usually default that. F mode setup, I default that, no changes to spoken flight mode. I may have a few voices in, but that doesn't really matter. Channel assign, this matters. This is what you want to look at. I basically make this as simple as possible, line them all up, throttle to throttle, aileron, elevator, rudder. Note, the 5th channel on Spektrum is named gear, and the 6th channel is named aux1. In Betaflight, the 5th channel is named aux1, and the 6th channel is named aux2. So it's because Spektrum chooses to name their 5th channel gear that the names won't line up with the names that you see in Betaflight. Next, you want to hit the next button here because this is where you'll assign which channel goes to which switch. The main switch that you use when drone racing as far as switches go is the arming and disarming. I use this back right switch, also known as switch number H. There's a little H on the top. There you can see that, H. For arming and disarming. For disarm, I have the switch towards me because it's very easy to reach back, flip that thing towards you in order to make it drop to the ground. And I make it arming to be away from me. So when I'm approaching the line, the radio is in the disarm state, and when I go to launch at 3, 2, 1, launch, I will arm and then go. So that's switch H. Switch B is the switch here. I use that for enabling and disabling the recording for black box. Other folks may actually use that switch for different flight modes, automatic level versus not, but I only fly in acro mode and I don't even have a switch for that. So that's the channel assign. For warnings, I do have it set that if the aux1, which is my arm, is over 25%, in other words, it is showing armed, then it will warn you when you're turning the radio on that your switch is in the wrong position and you want to be in the disarm position when you turn on your radio. I usually also have it, if you turn on the radio with the throttle over 30%, it will also warn you. Common warnings. For frame rate, I use 11 milliseconds, DSMX. You always want to use DSMX satellites. Spektrum has a $25 satellite that's specifically for multirotors. Works out perfect. There's never any range issues when you use the genuine Spektrum receivers. I have used other receivers, Lemon RX, Orange RX, and they have worked. Sometimes they've worked very well, but then I would have other of the exact same model that would have severe range issues. And it's just strictly a factor of the quality control on those receivers must not be at the same level that Spektrum has with their receivers, because I've never had a Spektrum receiver go bad. So they're low enough price now at only 25 bucks. Just get a Spektrum receiver. So once you have this in the system setup for your model.
Warning, servo over 25%.
Oh, that's that warning because I was in the arm position. Let me disarm.
Hold mode.
Okay. So next, you'll go through the servo setup. Okay. The travel limits actually are really, really important. In Spektrum, the travel limits default to 100. That's not high enough and low enough for Betaflight. Betaflight likes your numbers to be between 1,000 and 2,000, the low to be 1,000 and the high to be 2,000. In order to reach those ranges, you have to set the travel limits to, I've noticed, 147 on this radio, and I'd imagine most Spektrum radios are similar. So in the 147 range, that allows the upper limit to be close to 2,000. Doesn't have to be exact, like 1998 is close enough. And it allows the lower limit to be close to 1,000. Again, doesn't have to be exactly 1,000. 998 or 1,003 is okay. The defaults, if they're 100, the defaults are way off the low of 1,000, the high of 2,000. So I only do the 4 main channels at 147, 147. But there's travel, there's sub-trim, always 0. You always do 0 for all sub-trims, all trims, all the time. You should never use trims or sub-trims in a multirotor. And for reversing, notice that I have the throttle, elevator, and aux1 channels at one level of reversing, and the rudder, gear, and aileron all are on the other. And I actually forget which of those is considered reversed versus not reversed. I'll let you look at the settings there. If you match that up, they'll be in good shape. DR Expo, this you just tune towards your preference of flying. Many people do not play with any Expo in their radios. They only use the Expo that's within Betaflight. I use a combination of some Expo there, and I do find it easier if I may want to make a quick adjustment at the field to use Expo in the radio. And so often I will set Expo here for elevator and aileron. I do also use throttle cut. I set throttle cut for the same switch H, back right. I have it, if that switch is activated, to drive the throttle all the way to 0. So not only does it disarm when I hit that switch, but it also tells the transmitter to put 0 as if you drop the stick regardless of where the actual stick is. So that's sort of like an extra layer of protection. I have been experimenting with throttle curves. I've not flown this particular curve very much. It's not really much of a curve. It's just a 1 point to get the initial motor spin up that I like at the low part of the stick, so I have a little bit more granular second part of the stick. I've not flown this. If you just use the default throttle curve, you will fly just fine. When you want to get into more fine tuning on how it feels, you can start playing with throttle curve. I don't do anything with mixing, so no mixes are required for the setup. I do recommend that you use range test to test your model. Put your model on a table, walk 30 meters away from it, and then if you press this button here, it does reduce power. So if you're at reduced power at a distance of 30 meters, that's basically 30 steps away, be pressing that button and holding this button, and that's reduced power, and try to arm and disarm and see if your props spin or don't spin. And so that's one easy way to tell whether it's actually paying attention to your settings. With that, you can see if you're not getting the full range, then you might need to check your antennas on your receiver to make sure that your antennas are not blocked, or if there's not some other problem. Usually there's never a problem if you're using genuine Spektrum receivers. I believe that is roughly all that I use for making a Spektrum transmitter setup. Next I'll show you the settings in Betaflight to match this.